So are more expensive reptiles better than cheaper ones? When you're looking to pick out a snake or lizard or whatever reptile or amphibian you're looking at, there's going to be a bunch of different prices on different individuals, and there's lots of different things that can affect the price. So generally a more expensive reptile wasn't actually really going to be better, but there are different things that you should keep in mind that are going to change the price of that animal. I would say that generally there's going to be 4 main things that's going to change the price between individual reptiles, those being the age, the sex, the morph, and if they have any other issues, but we'll get into that more in just a minute. So firstly, the age. Usually older reptiles are going to be a bit more expensive than younger ones for a few different reasons. For one, the older animals are probably going to be closer to the age that they need to be or size that they need to be to breed. So if you're looking to breed, but you don't want to have to wait a few years or a few decades, depending on what animal it is, to breed it, you can just go ahead and pay a bit more for an adult or sub-adult, so you don't have to wait for that time to actually go ahead and start breeding them. Also, older animals will have already eaten a lot more food and consumed a lot more energy, so basically whoever's selling it to you would have already put a good bit of money just keeping the animal alive. So I guess it's kind of a way to pay for all the different resources that animal used throughout its life and that the breeder had to pay for. The second thing that's going to affect the price is usually whether it's a male or female. Females are generally more expensive for a couple reasons, but they're all based around breeding. Most of the time females will be more expensive because they're the ones that are actually going to lay the eggs or give birth to whatever animal that is. But it's more important that you have more females when you're breeding because that's going to get you more actual offspring. I guess that's kind of just a supply and demand thing. So since generally females are going to be more wanted, especially for breeding, they just make their prices a bit higher. A third reason, and usually the biggest reason that affects the price of a reptile, is the morph. The morph is how your snake is going to look and what genes it has that it can pass on to its offspring. For example, Gobi here, he's a reverse Okidi corn snake. There's lots of different possibilities as to what his parents could be, but let's just assume that his parents were an albino and an Okidi, which then make a reverse Okidi potentially. The genes of the morphs in snakes and other reptiles are going to work in different ways, and there's higher chances that they're going to end up being one thing over another. So I don't know too much about morphs, but we'll make an example here, and I'm pretty sure this one's true, it might not be, but I'm pretty sure albinism is going to be a recessive gene, which means that both parents are going to need that gene. They don't necessarily need to show it, but it's only going to show up in the offspring if that baby got both of those genes from the parents instead of the non-albino gene or whatever else it was. But basically, just keeping it simple, more rare morphs are going to be more expensive. This doesn't affect anything with their temperament or their size or whatever. The only thing it usually affects is going to be the colors and the patterns. The pricing can be super different between 2 ball pythons, where there's maybe not too many differences other than the actual colors and patterning. For example, a usual ball python is usually going to be about $20 to $50 depending on where you get it, but you can also find ball pythons that are over $20,000 or $30,000 just because their morph is so rare and so new, and the price might change with different morphs based on how popular they become. So it looks like Gobi's gonna go hang out in the chair now. But the fourth thing that might potentially change the cost of an animal, it's kind of more specific with certain animals. A good example is crested geckos. Crested geckos can drop their tail, and then once they do, it's not gonna grow back. So that's kind of something that people might not wanna pay as much for. So if you find a crested gecko with a drop tail, even if it's the same sex and age and morph as another crested gecko, it's probably going to be a bit cheaper because it already lost its tail. That's really the only example I can think of, but there are different sort of things that I'm sure people will either point out or you can ask about that will affect the price in that way. But these are the 4 things that are usually going to change whether an animal is more expensive or more cheap. But yeah, other than that, buying a pricier animal isn't necessarily getting you something better than a cheaper animal. It's really just based on your preference and what you plan on doing, like if you plan on breeding and you want to go ahead and do it, or if you want to go ahead and have a larger animal instead of a baby one, or if there's just some sort of color or pattern that you like more than a different one. But let me know if you can think of any other things that might affect the cost of a reptile or amphibian that you're checking out. But that'll be it for this video. I'm Alex, and thanks for watching.